What's going on, everybody? And we are logging on to episode 165 of the podcast. We got a very special episode for you guys tonight, a very relaxing episode, as we're doing a spotlight interview, the first spotlight interview of this year of 2025. We got a very special guest tonight. I would like to introduce to you guys right now Eliza Rose Kane, who does very plentiful breathwork classes. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Yes, absolutely. I, like all my guests, I appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your day, or night for this instance, to come and talk about what you do. And this is the great thing, and I love doing these spotlight interviews because it's all about learning about someone's craft and what got them into it, why they love it, and why they want to share it with the rest of the world. So that's primarily what we're really going to be talking about tonight. I could start off with the first question for you. What got you into breathwork techniques, and how did you find out about it necessarily that got you into it?
How I found out about it is very serendipitous, and I wasn't really looking for it. I didn't even know it existed. I mean, this is way back in 2008 when it first entered my life, and I had recently moved out to LA. I was in a really challenging period where I needed to start over, to just go on a new adventure, embrace something new.
Yes.
I was very disenchanted with life. I felt very disconnected and lost and essentially just uncertain, kind of asking, what's the point of all this? You know, I was in that rat race in New York, and it was just really intense, and life felt to be more than I could handle. So a move out to LA was wonderful, and it was great because it brought the sunshine and so much more outdoor time, but it didn't necessarily cause the inner turmoil I was in to be fixed, and I was still struggling when I was out there. But the serendipitous part comes in that I had found a job with a company, Lululemon, helping open their, I know it's very popular now.
Very popular now.
Yeah, it's great. And they had a great philosophy, and I loved what they stood for, and they were opening up their store in Brentwood, and they were looking for the management team, and so I got that job. But the store, before the store was open, part of our job was to go meet the yoga teachers and the owners of the studios to find out about what they were up to and just to develop those community relationships. Lululemon is very big on community. So it was great. We were out and about in the community, and I met these two women that were opening a new studio, and they said, we're going to be the first studio that's doing consistent breathwork classes in LA. And I was like, what's breathwork? And they're like, they just kind of looked at me. They're like, you know, it's something you just have to try. But we really resonated. They were just those type of people that I enjoyed talking to. I was like, okay. So it kind of, the seed was planted. Yeah. But fast forward a few months, I finally took a class. There was a lot that happened in between, actually. There was a bike accident there that of was a pivotal point in my life where I essentially went flying over the hood of the car, and I knocked the wind out of myself. Yes. And it was interesting, like it hit like your solar plexus, which is in energetic terms, or, you know, they look at that as your control center. Like, and when you have a lot of trouble letting go of control, a lot of times it comes from this area in your body. So it was so funny that that's where like I landed, knocking the wind out. And it felt as though the universe was kind of throwing me up against a concrete wall and saying, you need to stop, you need to slow down, and you need to face that inner turmoil, like those inner demons that are causing you to speed through life so quickly. Yeah. You can't keep avoiding them, and the sunshine's not going to make them go away. You have to deal with it. And so then I finally did do breath work, and it was interesting. At that point, I had been reading a lot of books on spirituality. I've been reading books on quantum physics and metaphysics. In New York, part of my crash and burn time in New York, I had an entrepreneurial venture called Wise Ass. It was a witty t-shirt company that we did, which was so fun. But
cool, it sounds fun.
It was a great idea, but it really shows you that if you're not in a good place yourself, especially as an entrepreneur, you're the foundation of your company. And if you're not good and your business partner and you aren't good, then it doesn't matter how good the idea, it's going to implode.
Yeah.
So that was huge. But what was so cool about that experience coming into my life is that I had started to really read these personal development books, these self-development books, because I understood, like, I'm the foundation of this business.
Yeah.
And that led me to these spiritual books, where I was reading about energy and how we're energy, everything's energy, and if you can work with your energy.
Yes.
But I was kind of, as I was reading them, I'd be like, well, that's great. This sounds really cool and interesting, but how is that applicable to my day-to-day life? Like, that doesn't really make sense, and I'm a New Yorker, so there was that cynical part of me that's like, okay, yeah, great, this is a bunch of woo-woo stuff, even though it's quantum physics, you know, and that's one of the strongest sciences right now, where there's the most...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, when I did the breathwork class, what was so powerful about that first experience was that I started to feel myself tingling and vibrating. Mm-hmm. And then I started to feel like this pressure on my chest. And I was like, this is my energy, and this is where my energy is caught. And all those words I had been reading started to have so much more of a kinesthetic understanding of them, that I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, there's something to what I'm reading and what I'm exploring. And so that's really where the interest first peaked. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I went down a rabbit hole, which is a whole other story.
Right.
But that's really where it began, was just kind of this, we are so much more than we ever thought. And
yes.
Maybe that part of me that was having so much trouble facing the life before me, part of the reason was because I knew, like, I'm like, there's something bigger than just this linear logical path that you feel is almost like pushed upon you.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's a very long answer.
No,
but,
I loved it though. And
yeah.
I would like to dive into pieces of that as well too.
Okay, awesome.
So first off, I want to ask the transition from New York to LA.
Yeah, okay.
Big difference for you?
Huge difference.
Huge difference.
I was always an East Coast person. I
Right.
had been to California, but I went to school in Virginia. I grew up in New York. Like it was huge, and I'm very close with my family. So leaving was really hard. Like it was very big to be out on my own there.
That's a big confidence thing for you to jump into doing something like a move is big just in general.
Yes.
From New York to LA, huge, especially when you are close with your family. I can't even right now. I can't even imagine moving away from the family, because we have a big family too, and very close as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do it for the better off of things, as far as maybe career wise or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or other reasons, but I want to say I'm proud of you for that, for making that big jump in that sense, or taking a jump in that sense. And listen, it led you to what you love now too, which is awesome as well, as you know.
Yeah, and it feels important to kind of add into that equation. So part of what helped me make that jump is my mom and my stepdad were getting divorced. Okay. And so there was this fracture in our family that was really painful and really uncomfortable, and we've navigated it incredibly over the years, but when it was happening, we were in it, and I'm so close with my mom, and so to experience up close what she was going through was so hard, and I knew, like, the mature part of me knew she needs to do this. This is her process.
Yes.
She needs to go through what she needs to go through here. But the other part of me, like, was just like, I can't be around this though. Like, I was taking too much of it on.
Sure.
So it was a blessing though, even though that was so painful. It was the impetus I needed to leave. And you're right, go explore the world and go really figure out, like, something I never probably would have come across in New York for years.
Right.
So yes, it was, I'm really fortunate, even within the challenge, the blessing that kind of really came out of it.
Yeah, and you know, it could be like a blessing in disguise sort of thing, and you don't realize it till later on. But it's interesting that you said that, because especially, you know, during, if you don't mind me talking about my assumption of it, if someone, like, say, if my parents were getting divorced, whatever, like, that's hard to see because it's two people you're looking up to struggling at a hard time. And that, for a child, or, you know, that being the daughter or son of that instance, it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah. So that being a push of it also, it could have been, like I said, a blessing in disguise in a sense, as far as, like, pushing you towards where you were headed. So you seem to have a very interesting life as far as from the New York life to now. I would like to get into most of it, if you don't mind, as well. Yeah. One of the things I would like to ask is that when you first moved to LA, did you have a plan once you got down there, or was it just right from the jump, right? Let's see where I'm going to be living for here right now, and then move on from there.
Well, I had an uncle who I wasn't really close to at the time. He lived in Orange County. Okay. So I had a place I could stay for like a month or two. Yeah. So that was like kind of the landing place. I needed to just take that jump. But then when I went up to LA, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was it was in the 2008 recession. So finding a job was like, it was so, I mean, I was valeting cars at one time. There was a valet girl, like, I was in the East LA, like, not like a sketchy part of LA. It was wild. Like, there was literally, there was two gangs, and like one of the gangs, like there was a bodega across the street. And these two gangs, like rival gangs, kind of hung out on the streets. And I would just like sit there like at my like ballet stand, and I had to wear like, I had my ballet flats and like my little skirt and like buttoned up shirt. Right. And I would just sit on my notebook like writing about my creative ideas or whatever. Yeah. And one day I was on the phone with my mom, and suddenly I like hear all these helicopters going, and I'm like, Mom, and then all like 4 cop cars fly up, and they're like, this is a bus. Oh, and I'm literally like on the phone, my mom's like, duck, Eliza, duck. Like, she was freaking out because they did this like whole raid and bus like right in front of me. Oh my God. So it was a really interesting time to like, I knew I could always go back home. Like, I knew, but like there was just this part of me that was like, I want things to be different. I want something new. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And so I would do crazy things like that. Like, you know.
I think it's all about sticking with it as well, no matter how hard it may get. Yeah. Jumping into the fire, right? Yeah. Jumping into the fire and learning your path through that, I think, is one of the best ways of learning, first off. Yeah. And then as long as you stick with it too, like for at least a decent amount of time. And eventually, if you're like, you know what, this isn't working out, then it's basically, for me, in my opinion, acceptable to be like, all right, let's move on to say the next thing or whatever. You know what I mean? But as long as you're giving it a chance. Yeah. When you first got into breathwork, how did that change, which you spoke a little bit about before, but did that change your perspective on your thought process as far as your perception on things and how you're able to calm yourself down in tough times, for that matter?
Yeah, no, it did. And so here's the thing that I experienced with breathwork, and this is what happened with me, and this is what I see with a lot of people, is that people circle around it for a while. And like they'll hear about it, they'll maybe try it once, like, and some people dive right in, especially now that it's more mainstream. Right. Some people will dive right in, but a lot of people like me will circle. So I did that class, and then like a month later I did another class. Like, I was kind of dipping my toe in.
It wouldn't be as consistent,
right? Like, it wasn't like I was suddenly like, wow, I had this amazing experience, here I go. Yes. I'm all in. Yeah. It was actually not at all for me. Like, and part of the reason for that is that your breath is the most intimate relationship you will ever have. You don't exist without it. Right. So it knows you inside and out. And when you start working with it, it is going to cause you to have to face all of the parts of yourself and the parts that you might be really avoiding. Sure. So I was avoiding a lot. I had a really... my mom's first marriage, they got divorced when I was 4, and my dad essentially was not in my life ever since then. So there was that abandonment issue. There was this attitude of like, if I don't care, it can't hurt me. And so there was just like this little chip on my shoulder about like, I don't really care that he didn't want anything to do with me, like that I wasn't dealing with. I didn't face that. So when it came to the breath work, I think subconsciously, like I wasn't aware I was doing this.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, here we go, like I'm gonna try it, that's cool, I like this, wow, like I've never been able to relax like that before in my life. Like you experience, you're like, wow, like this is really rejuvenating.
Yeah, and it's like you don't even know you needed it until it was done.
Right, exactly. But even with that, it wasn't like I was suddenly like, yeah, I'm going to make this my consistent practice.
Right.
I kind of was circling around. But then I actually had to temporarily leave LA. And I did, I ended up doing a private session with a breathwork practitioner. And it was in New York that I did the session. And I didn't know. So my breathwork teacher is David Elliott, and there's a lot of forms of breathwork out there. Him and his style, it always just resonated, and it just kind of felt like, no, this is the one I'm going to focus on and dive into.
As far as technique you're talking about?
Technique and just also teachings, because the breathwork is just a tool. It's really a tool of self-discovery, self-awareness, like all these elements of just reconnecting you to the truth of who you are.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that reconnection and that essentially spiritual journey, the breathwork is just one of the tools. Yeah. And so while the practice is, while a lot of that is the breathwork is the cornerstone, it's not the end all be all. So like David's also, he teaches a lot of other things about like intuition and your connection to the earth and all these other pieces of the equation. And so his work really resonated with me. Just who he is as a person too really resonated. And so when I went back to New York and I was like, okay, like this was like, Google wasn't even like that popular. But I was like, I'm going to just Google breathwork practitioners, and like, they have to be like, their criteria is like David Elliott. They have to be trained by David Elliott. Okay. So I found this practitioner, and she was on the upper West Side. So I think she might have been a Columbia student, but she was around like the Columbia campus in New York. And I just like, I don't know why I felt so strong. Like I was going through another change. I was like, I just really want to do this private session. So it was when like we still had flip phones. So I had this like voice in my head that was just like, bring a pad, like a pen and paper. You're going to want to capture this. So I just like brought it. I don't know why, I just did. Yeah. And so, cause I journaled sometimes or whatever. So I go to this session and I show up and I don't know what to expect. And I'm breathing and she put these ocean stones in your hand, and these ocean stones are a way to kind of help ground you and just connect you to the different elements, like the earth and the water and all this stuff. So she's leading you through this whole experience, and I'm breathing and I'm starting to like really like feel myself like pulsate and vibrate really intensely. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa. And then this song comes on, and I don't know what it was about the voice, whatever, it like hit inside in a way that just cracked my heart open, basically. And I just started like sobbing, and and I didn't cry at that point. Like now I cry, but like then I was like so stoic and shut down. Right. So I'm sobbing, and I feel this like this huge release is happening, and then suddenly I feel like so expanded. Like I drop the rocks, and I start to lose a sense of self, and I start to go somewhere. Like I don't know where it is, but I'm just like off, and I see like light. Like it sounds very like dramatic, but it was like I wasn't gonna say dramatic. It sounds like almost like a psychedelic experience. Yeah, exactly. And you've done the breath work. This isn't psychedelic, and it's very gentle. It's not like you're forcefully breathing. Right. Like you're just I'm just like breathing, doing my things. But the next thing I know, I feel like I'm surrounded by angels, and I can't really see like the contours of them. Like it's more the essence of them. Like I can kind of feel. Yeah. And I feel like I'm being basked in this love, like this unconditional love, and I'm sobbing then from the love. Like it's just so overwhelming. Like I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I just keep hearing like, this is the source of your creation. Like this is like who you are. Like this is what you come from. Right. So I come back from that experience, and I'm just like, what just happened? Like it was one of those like, I tried to capture it in my writing, and when I was on the train home, like I'm trying to capture it.
Yeah.
But the reason,
recalling basically what happened.
like, yeah, and I just like wrote anything I could because I was like, I just knew I needed to capture the essence of that moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever I write right now is going to hold on to that essence, at least for me, even if like the words don't make sense, whatever it is. So I captured that. And the reason I'm telling this story is because what that did for me and what Breathworks is it just kind of flipped my whole perspective on the world after that, where I was like, if I come from love, like if that is the essence of whom I am, then wouldn't life be on my side? Like, wouldn't life like want to be rooting for me? And it's like that foundational philosophical question, you either live in a friendly or an unfriendly universe.
Right.
And so it just planted this seed that it was like, no, like the universe has your back. Like you come from love. So what that's taught me and what breathwork has kind of been such a practice. So you have that epiphany. I always say like the epiphany is just the beginning though. You then need to like integrate that. So to integrate that, that's going to be honestly a lifetime of integration, because every single time you come against a thought or a belief or an experience in your life that wants to tell you that you're separate, that you're alone, that you don't come from love, you have to kind of reconcile that and come back to that place of no, like the source of who I am is love. And so that's really the foundation of what breathwork kind of has carried through to me throughout the years ever since.
Yeah.
Is that like come back to that no matter what's going on in your life. Find your way back in your own time, no matter how down you might get. Can you find yourself back to that place, like that truth of who you really are?
In my term of it, what you're trying to explain right now, or are explaining, very great, by the way. It's all that experience sounds amazing, honestly. Yeah. Being grounded, going back to the roots of yourself. That's how I would look at it in a simpler terms of it.
Yeah.
I've had somewhat similar experiences where I was like you at one point, and probably still am a little bit, where very stoic and whatnot. Like if I felt like I needed to shed some tears or whatever, I'm gonna be holding them back. Also depending on who I'm with at that time too, doing whatever breath work or say Reiki healing or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I would love to do another breathwork session or even a Reiki healing thing where I really fully delve deep, because I won't care anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like who's around or whatnot. It's for myself. And I feel like it seems like that's what you went into that class, the private instruction, with that mentality of it, and I think it helped out tremendously for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that higher voice within you, like your higher self, what they call it, where that wants to have a connection, that wants to have a dialogue with us, that wants to be a part of this. And so sometimes it has to get really loud to get our attention. But when you do slow down and you do take the time to go within, you start to connect to that voice more and more frequently. And it's just like any relationship, the more you nurture it and the more attention and awareness you give to it, the stronger the relationship becomes.
Yes.
So it's a way to start to really trust like that inner guidance and intuition that's going to help you navigate. But you're totally right. That all starts from within.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to just tune out the noise and find that time. Yeah.
You brought up that you come from love.
Yes.
Do you believe there's another side of it, that some people are like that where they came from? Because if there's love, there could also be hate, for instance, like that. Do you believe there is that good and evil, like both out there in the world?
Yeah.
And say there are people that are maybe rooted from hate, maybe born that way or grown up that way, whatever the case may be, that everyone has their own story. Is there a way to do you believe, is there a way to transition to like hate to love? Like and what would you say the best way to transition to something like that is? Like, would it be breath work? Would it be taking classes and tuning into yourself? Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to like explore, but I think the root to understand, like I do have our source of creation, like whatever we come from, whether you want to call it God, source, the universe,
Sure.
or just existence.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I believe the core of that is love. I also believe, though, that the earth plane that we live on, we live in a world of polarity. And so when you think, well, why would we come to a world of polarity? So in order to understand what you are, a lot of times you have to understand what you aren't. So the contrast, that polarity, is what allows us to actually understand the depth of love that we come from. And I do believe in evil. I've seen it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel it. Like, I think these times, like, we are essentially in a very dark era, a very dark age in a lot of ways. I think
agree.
We're heading towards a lot of light. We have a renaissance approaching in many ways. And we're still in that, like, dark age period where we're seeing the true underbelly of the world. Like, we're seeing things that we have heard about, but we haven't wanted to really look at.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of the transmutation process, is you have to be able to see it in order to transmute it.
Right.
But you have to have the capacity to see it, is what's really important. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing, and that's why a lot of people have trouble navigating this idea of evil, is that they can't even really identify it or see it, because they don't have the constitution for it.
I was about to say, do you think it's because of beliefs, or maybe not any belief at all on anything for that matter, God, science, whatever the case may be? Do you think it could be, like, an instance like that, a foundation of belief in whatever they want to believe in, where they aren't realizing, or maybe even they do see something and they almost disregard it? They
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
they think no mind to it. I feel like that could be an instance of that, but then again, like, who really knows? We're each our own person in that sense of it too.
Right.
You know.
Right, and we all have different experiences, and I think some people are caught, like, they're stuck in around very evil, dark people. So it's very hard.
It's right, yeah.
And so when it comes to the transmuting, it's, I think, you have to have a few components. Like, one, you have to be anchored in the light. You have to have exposure and experience within the light, but then you also, which helps to nourish your system. Like I talked to you last night with the breathwork a lot about how important it is that this practice just nourishes your system, so you have capacity to handle life and, like, just the things, all the BS we have to deal with.
Whatever gets thrown your way.
Right, exactly. But part of that capacity is also building a capacity to be able to look and be like, oh no, there's evil in this world.
Yes.
And we need to transmute it. But in order to transmute it, you have to have that anchor in the light.
Yeah.
You have to be able to see it, not get caught in it though. And you have to move the love, like. And I think part of that is that, like, I don't think people are born evil. I think people are very pure, and I think I think evil happens when there's the illusion of separation, when we have those moments where we feel abandoned. That is when evil can kind of creep in and start whispering in our ear and start guiding and moving people in directions to eventually do. But I don't think the core essence of humanity is evil.
I agree 100% with you. It's like when it sees the open door, it's running to get in there any chance it can.
Right. And that's why rooting into our humanity, rooting into our heart is more important now than ever.
Yeah.
But it's also, we're being so challenged with it because it's so easy to just dissociate and disconnect. And so, but it's so important because then our sovereignty, evil has no power over us. And that's what the illusion is. But evil will trick you, it will confuse you, it will make you think it is more powerful than you. And so, I mean, that's why they call it a spiritual warrior, because it's a very challenging path when you start to kind of wake up. Because I think a lot of people are right now just tuned out. They're like, the world's too intense, it's too harsh, I have no capacity to deal with this, I'm literally just trying to get by. Right. But then when you start to wake up, it's like a double-edged sword, where you start to experience, like, deeper connection than ever before, and you're like, oh my god, this world is magnificent and brilliant, and, like, holy shit, I get to live here. Like, this planet, our bodies, the way we connect, and the synergistic relationship between us and the earth, that, I believe, is the most advanced technology in existence. And I'm like, the more we understand that and the more we lean into that, the more exciting like it is to be human.
Yeah.
But the challenge too is that when you start to wake up, your senses start to come online more. You also then start to feel the pain of the world more. You start to notice the harshness more, and
Yes.
it's just a really challenging walk, but it's worth it, but it's not easy.
I think life is just a bunch of trials. It's tested.
Yeah.
You're being tested all the time. Either
And tested's a funny word because like tested kind of makes it like it's something outside of you that's grading you, and like you either pass or you fail, when it's like you're kind of living life and you want to grow and evolve. But I think I just get funny with the word test because like sometimes it almost feels disempowering. It's almost like there's this God outside, like
right.
yeah, like there's an authority outside of you that's testing you, and you've got to either be good or not. You got to, and it's like, no, like I want to, as a soul, I want to try and challenge myself to be the strong. So like that can come in adversity because adversity builds strength and fortitude and just like a greater scope of awareness.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that better too. Actually.
Yeah. And it's just a nuance, like, because I get the essence of what you're talking about.
Yes.
I do, yeah.
All right, so basically what I would like you to do now is explain what you're doing in the current moment, and then we could go into what we were just talking about in how it could help with that. So please explain to me exactly what your breathwork class is, what it consists of, and just everything all about it. How long it is, how long it could be, and things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great. So...
Oh, and I would also like to just say before you even start, sorry about that. We did the breathwork class last night.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was magnificent. It was something, like we said before, it's something you didn't realize you needed in that time and place.
Yeah.
And at working a very demanding job, it's very nice to be just in that moment. Nothing on your mind isn't racing, and literally relaxing in my belief probably the highest extent by controlling your breath. And it was incredible yesterday, and I really appreciate you showing us that technique that you showed us yesterday.
Oh my gosh, of course, you're welcome. I'm glad you were open to it, because not everyone is. They like the idea of it, but actually diving into the experience, making the time to try something new, it's hard. People are maxed out. Like they're just kind of like, I'm working a lot, and they don't realize this is going to actually support you. Right. So you like really just being like, no, I've had a long day, but I'm still going to show up and do it. Like that was awesome, and I do appreciate that like a lot.
I also, I'm open to a lot of stuff. Yeah. Especially stuff like this too. Yeah. Because I've been open to realms of this before in the past too, which I've talked to you about yesterday as well. I think people are skeptical about stuff like this, and we could go into that a little bit later too. But please explain like what your class is about necessarily. What is your mission for your clients?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So. There's a lot, but I'll narrow it down because, like, I can do it in person. I can do it online. You do individuals. You do couples. You do private groups.
Yeah, very accessible.
Whole spectrum. You do workshops. You do these big classes.
Yeah.
And so, right now and so like if you're doing like a one-on-one session or you're doing a class, the sessions are going to range between like 30 and 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. A private session is going to be like an hour, because in that beginning of the private session, you check in on what's individually going in with the person. So it's kind of like, all right, where are you feeling stuck in your life? What's going on? How are you looking for support?
Yes.
And so there's that initial dialogue in the beginning to just kind of, for me to find out as a practitioner, like, hey, what's going on with you and how can I help you?
Yes.
And then I kind of explain the technique, which is an open mouth breathing technique that really helps you get out of your head and into your body. Mm-hmm. So we talk about the technique, and then I lead you through the experience where I play music, you get to lie down, and I'm kind of just there encouraging you to stick with the breath. Yeah. That's why it does help to do like a one-on-one session or do a class or something, because you have that accountability, like you have that person that's like, hey, keep breathing. Yeah. Because if you are new to the practice, doing it on your own, sometimes it can be hard to stick with the breathing pattern. You're kind of like, this is a little weird, why am I doing it?
Like an awkward feeling almost.
Right.
Like awkward, maybe even a little uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah. And which is actually a great part of this practice. So that first portion of the breathing, it's called what we call the work phase, because it feels like a little bit more work. Your mind is still active. You have to keep focusing on the breath because you're getting comfortable with the breathing pattern. If you might feel fidgety, you might be agitated, like anything that you've kind of been holding on to, the breath is kind of surfacing to clear. So the first like 5 to 15 minutes even can be a little uncomfortable.
Sure.
But that's okay, because it's teaching you to kind of move through, like just keep breathing, keep sticking with it, move through the discomfort, you're okay, you're safe, just keep moving, and then it starts to become a lot more fluid, and you start to relax into more of a just like rhythmic rhythm that you almost can sometimes feel like you're being breathed, and it doesn't feel like so much effort.
Right.
And you start to kind of just relax and surrender over to life a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's in that place that you are able to kind of let the mind just starts to drift away, and that's when the visions start to come in, or you hear the guidance, or you start to notice sensations or experiences in your body. And so that's kind of the flow of what's happening, and then at the end you get that space to just be and relax and drop into deep relaxation. I'm holding space for that experience. It's like, I like to call it like, you're midwifing, in the sense where I'm not having the experience, but I'm helping you feel safe to dive into whatever experience you need to have.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, and so with the one-on-one, you're able to sometimes go a little bit deeper because you have that focused attention. And if you are dealing with something traumatic, like if you've had an intense experience, you do want to get some one-on-one work, because the breath will activate things. It activates things so that they can move and clear and be healed. But you want to do that in the right environment where you feel safe, especially 100%. If it's like some serious trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'll do like the one-on-one sessions are great for that. You can do them online, you can do them in person, if I'm local. But then the classes are great. So the thing with the one-on-ones and the private groups is that it's very limited. And I feel really called with my mission. I feel really called to reach a broader audience and to really encourage, especially like the 20s and 30s, to go on this journey of self-exploration. Because yes, the breath is so nourishing. It's going to help you deal with anxiety. It's going to help you relax. It's going to help you de-stress. But it's also going to start to connect you to the truth of who you are. And we're all so different and unique. And it's going to help connect you to like the parts of you that maybe you have even been shut off to. I didn't know I was a writer until I was 28 years old. Like, I was like, what? I don't write. And then I had poetry and songs and all this creativity coming through me.
Awesome.
But I had been so shut down that I didn't even know that. And what the breath does is it just starts to open you back up. And you start to discover, like, who are you? And, what is this relationship with your body? Like, how can you heal your body so maybe you don't have to get sick all the time, so that you can feel vibrant and full of life force and all of that. So I really want to encourage that, and so I have my monthly online class where I do that, and that's about 50 minutes long, and I lead people through the experience, but it's through Zoom, so they're in the comfort of their own home, and it's recorded, so if they can't do it live, because everybody's off camera, because the whole goal is for you to go within. And so I'm on camera, so they can see me and like feel guided and like, okay, like I'm in this. And then they can kind of do the experience from home. They can do it with their partner if they're with somebody or a friend or whatever. And then they get a recording so they can listen to it multiple times. Or if they can't go live, they can do it. And so I really want to get that going for a lot more people. Because it's accessible and people all over can do it. They don't have to be local with me.
I was about to say, definitely more accessible. But do you think people would rather that instead of like maybe say either them coming to you, you going to them, or even in a group setting, they don't want to be with people they don't know necessarily, and they just want to be with the people that they're close with, and like you said, the comfort of their own home. Do you believe that's a more popular way that people have been going with these classes?
I think it's a way we're heading.
Okay.
So what's great about the one-on-one is that it helps you get comfortable with the breathing pattern. Like, I'm right there supporting you. So it's like you're able to kind of stick through any discomfort. You can ask questions. And the person is so much more likely to breathe for the full time and drop into the experience just because I'm there. with the online stuff, the challenge if they're new is they have to understand the value. But I believe when they understand the value, they'll stick through it,
Yes.
and then it is, I think, a way to really, it's going to be easier and more beneficial.
Yeah.
But right now we're still kind of establishing that value. Like, people have to first understand, no, this is worth it. Like, I want to show up to this class,
Yeah.
and I want to show up and go all in, not like, oh, like I'm going to half-ass the Zoom class, you know, like.
Right.
So
Right.
I think as we present the value and people start understanding, like, hey, there's like a lot of bang for my buck in doing this.
Yeah.
I think then the online classes are going to be really great. Because one, if you do it live, it's going to be so cool to know that other people are doing it at the same time as you.
Yes, absolutely.
You feel connected,
Yeah.
yet you're right. You have your privacy, you have your own space, you're in the comfort of your own home. Like, you can just go to bed afterwards. Like,
Absolutely.
there's so many wins to it. The only trade-off is just making sure you really breathe during that class
Right.
and don't half-ass it.
Yeah.
But that's why we're talking about it.
So this is the route I would take for this in a newcomer in breathwork classes. I would first go for maybe even more than one. Let's say 2 or 3 one-on-one sessions, right? Really make sure that I'm doing it right, the breath and everything like that. Making sure I'm really getting comfortable with myself in the zone. You know, eventually after the work stage, and then I would transition over to the online classes with say a group or whatnot on Zoom.
Yeah.
And make it almost like a weekly thing, like to keep it consistent, to keep it almost like you're working out 3-4 times a week sort of deal, like in that comparison, like in a sense. Make it almost a very good habit, basically, to keep on doing, keeping it consistent. I think that's the way I would go about it, to be completely honest. Do you see that as being the most ideal way for the most part?
I do.
Yeah.
I think some people, if they don't have access to like a person in their area, like it can be challenging. Like, they can always do it on Zoom. They can do like a one-on-one on Zoom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is ideal though, because you do want to feel comfortable with the technique.
Right.
And then I agree, it is kind of like going to the gym, where you're like, if I can go 3, 4, 5 times a week, like, why not?
Yeah.
And part of that, so one of the things I started to do, I had done like right after COVID, I did a membership where each month I did a 15-minute, a 30-minute, and a 40-minute meditation for people. But it was a little premature. Like, not enough people. I didn't have an online presence. Like, that's something I'm working on kind of establishing more.
Yeah.
I didn't have an online presence, and it just wasn't the right time for me to be doing that. But the reason I share this is that I have like 40 meditations that I created that I'm like, oh, so I've been launching them on YouTube as part of my channel, so that once people do get introduced to the breathwork, once they are comfortable, they then have like 40 different meditations to pull from. So you can make your own playlist, but sometimes you're like, I don't want to think about making a playlist. I want to hear a little bit of guidance. So then that's the foundation I am laying to help people with the consistency part, to help them. So I agree with you, yeah.
So the meditation is the meditation videos that you have on your YouTube different from the breath work? Like, would you say that's like a follow-up to it, or is it the same?
It's the same.
It is the same, okay.
They kind of jump right in because they're really designed for people that have already done the breath work. So I have a demonstration video that lets people kind of get familiar with the technique, and I'm more specific about it.
Right.
But when I'm doing the meditations, on those meditations, I give like a minute intro, and then like I'm playing the music, you're diving into the breathing, and it's kind of like last night, it's just online.
The music was a huge compliment to last night. It went well. It went so well with it.
Yeah.
As far as choosing the songs and everything like that, you did an excellent job first off with that. I think it just fit the nature of it.
Yeah.
Was there a process in like choosing what songs to choose for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing classes since 2012, so
Right.
I have curated a lot of songs that I love, that I find that have resonated deeply in my own breathwork practice, and that have resonated in the classes I've taught. So I have this like huge pool of songs that I play with, and then like I just kind of feel, it's a very intuitive process actually. Like I kind of just trust it. It's one of those things where I'm like, what song am I feeling for tonight? Like what's the vibe? Like what is the group I'm gonna be with? What is the energy of the world right now? Like I play into a lot of just like kind of connecting, like where are people at and what music will kind of support them.
Yeah.
And what's kind of pretty neutral, cool music that like most people are just gonna like.
Oh, for sure.
So, but I kind of feel it. Like it is, the strategy too is like something very unique about breathwork versus standard meditation is that breathwork pulls you into the body, and it in your body is where you can hold emotions. I talked about this last night, emotions that have not been felt, or emotions that just want to be felt more of, or whatever it is. And so the music complements that because it helps sometimes people access emotions that they're having trouble accessing on their own.
Absolutely.
So that kind of goes in conjunction with the whole process of just helping people release. And let me tell you, like you're gonna, but people don't realize that when you have that cathartic cry or you yell, like sometimes you just need to like scream into a pillow.
Sure, yeah.
It's amazing how much lighter you feel in your body.
You need to let it out.
Emotions are heavy. They weigh you down. They're exhausting.
Yes.
So as much as, especially in the Northeast area, we can be a little bit more stoic, I do really encourage people, like, if you feel when you're doing the breath work, let it move. Like you're just bringing freedom to your body and like your energy.
Absolutely. But it is a very uncomfortable feeling. Yeah. And obviously people don't want to be uncomfortable.
I know.
But it is that hurdle that you do need to take to get that relief in a sense,
Yeah.
It might seem scary or embarrassing or whatever the case may be, but you feel you're going to thank yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
Either crying or even like I like to call it, or a lot of people call it, like the primal scream sort of deal.
Yep.
Very intense, very strong. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the best place for it. You're like, no,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's actually awesome to let things go like that. Like you said, emotions are heavy, and in my opinion, it's really important not to let it build up. Even if it's not breath work you're doing, I would say even talking to people and expressing how you're feeling is also majorly important too. It's another form of letting out whatever your emotions are at the time being as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need communication for healthy relationships of any capacity.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
As far as the breath work goes and the technique of it, you showed us one last night that I thought was a very powerful one. It's one that I haven't heard of before. Are there other techniques to do as well? And the one we did last night, which was, I like to call it belly breathing, like belly breathing, expand the stomach, then chest, and then let it out all throughout the mouth.
Yeah.
What's like the experience level? What was it? Are there like experience levels to it? Is that like a beginner level breath work?
It's always the same. So and this does get confusing because when people are like, oh, you teach breath work, they think I teach all different forms because there's so many different forms. There's, especially when it comes to performance breathing, there's like a million different styles of breathing.
Yeah.
But this is really the pattern that I teach.
Okay.
And I just kind of stick with it. This is what I find works. It's gentle, yet it's powerful, where you can go in, you can go really far without it being a little bit too aggressive. I don't knock at other breathwork techniques because like different things work for different people.
Absolutely, yeah.
At all, like, but I do find we are a society that is very like go, force, like more is better. And so sometimes breathing can be, for some people, they have these really big experiences, but maybe they're breathing for three hours, or maybe they're breathing really forcefully. And some people need that. Some people need a little bit more fire. I find, though, a lot of where the world is at right now is we need consistency, we need steadiness, and we need gentleness. And that's what I find this practice does. It's like, if you're just consistent and you're steady with that breath, it's gentle, but it's going to take you there. And I've had so many mind-boggling out there, like, I've never done psychedelics, not because I'm against them, because I don't need them. I'm like, I don't need to be going any further out there. I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
the breath has taken me into some of the most profound and expansive experiences that are amazing.
That are, like, fulfilling.
Right. And
Right.
I'm like, I don't want more. Like,
Right.
because you do with anything, like, you brought up the point of being grounded earlier. Like, that's so important. Even with the breath work, like, you have to make sure you're still staying rooted in this reality and you're letting the breath help you with this reality, but not just always escaping this reality.
I like that. I mentioned it like almost like it's a psychedelic experience and whatnot, and you saying you don't even need anything like that. So, have you seen clients come in, coming to you, or maybe even other people in the field or whatnot, that are really having a hard time with anxiety and depression even? And most people that have these sort of feelings and whatnot, the anxiety and depression, like myself, you get checked out in a sense, and they'll put you on some sort of medication or something like that to help you out. I know there's plenty of like natural herbs out there and everything that can help out. Where do you say breath work fits in with all that, and maybe even it being preventative from taking medication? Do you see that being a big thing with breath work?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and thank you for bringing this up, because that's another huge part of the mission of like where I really want to explore is that breathwork definitely holds many miraculous experiences, many out there. Like, there's a lot of profoundness in breathwork. I believe, though, its truest superpower is prevention and alleviation, and where it's something that if you can get this started with teenagers, with young children, just like get them exposed to it, help them understand it.
Yes.
It's not that it's going to stop life from happening. It's not that it's going to prevent inevitable things. I think like sometimes life just happens. Things are fated. Like but it's going to help alleviate, and it's also can prevent. There are things that are preventable.
Yeah.
And I think this is a tool that helps people in that sense, because it connects you. It creates this, when you get to know yourself, like this whole relationship I'm talking about, like with the breath, like knowing yourself inside and out.
Yeah. That
healthy sense of self is your strongest barrier. It is your healthiest barrier in life. Is just this is who I am. I'm not afraid to take up space. I'm not afraid to be seen. I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid of who I am. I trust myself.
Yes.
That is going to help you just navigate life very differently, and can maybe prevent some stuff, because unfortunately, like, predators prey on individuals that are wounded, that are collapsed, that are challenged, and it's heartbreaking. And so this can hopefully just help that a little bit, but also our well-being. It's our energy, it's our flow of our energy. And so anxiety a lot of times is the energy is just, it's spinning, it's moving. And so if you learn to manage your energy, you can learn. Now, if you're in the middle of an anxiety attack, I'm not going to say lay down on the floor and do this breathing technique. No, like that's not the answer. Like if you're in some like serious stuff, like there are times when people need medication, and that's when too the whole element of psychedelics, I think, is going to be really supportive, because we are in this dance of like, pharmaceuticals are needed, and I think the biggest challenge of pharmaceuticals is that it's so hard to get off of them, and we don't have a solution yet.
Right.
So to me, it's like I'm not a doctor. Like that's not my field to be able to say take this or not, and I never would tell somebody. And if there are things that you can do to keep people from having to go there, that would be
I would say better off.
Yeah. But if they are, I find it can help alleviate. Maybe if they're trying to get off, it's a support agent.
Yes.
To help ease that. But it's not, it's not going to cure. Like it's not a miracle drug in the sense like.
Oh, right. It's more of a tool than anything.
Yeah.
I like that you said that. If like the breath work, meditation, all these tools and practices, like to be open to it first off, and to experience it early on in life.
Yeah. And
almost have it as like a natural practice for yourself, without even realizing it sometimes when you're having a hard time, and just naturally just doing these breaths and whatnot. and if it helps you, it helps you, and it's almost like being prepared for like certain instances.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, one of the greatest things that the breathwork did for me was teaching me to show up for my life. So, like, each time you lay down to do the breathwork, your breath is your life force. It's your vitality. It's everything.
Yeah.
So each time you lay down, you are literally showing up for your life. And you are training your nervous system. You are training yourself to show up. And so each time, each breath you take, like that whole practice, it's just this experience so that when life gets really hard, like I dealt with some massive depression recently when my grandma passed away, and I was dealing with this whole, I had to bring her through the whole end of life stuff, and I got knocked on my ass in a way that, like, I was like, I don't know, remember like feeling like this, like it was really hard.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's life, like
it is life,
it's
right?
life, we go through it,
right.
And when I was in it, I didn't even kind of realize it, but like looking back, I'm like, I somehow still, I had it like almost ingrained, like just keep showing up. And it was the little stuff. It wasn't like, hey, I need to be like showing up for my life. It was like, no, just keep breathing. Like that, like, and I realized that the breath work, it kind of just ingrained that, like, get up in the morning and go for your walk, do this, do like, it was so habitual because I had been doing it for so long,
right, that
I realized it really helped carry me through because I just trained myself. Like, this is just what you do. You show up for your life. You show up for the breath.
Yeah.
And again, there was times I didn't, but like, I think it helped a lot in that process.
Do you have any tips for, because it's very easy to go into a hole, basically, in a depression state, and sometimes it's very hard to get out of in that sense. Say with a family passing, or maybe some other event that unfortunately happened. What do you believe the breath work, or maybe some other things that you know of or have done yourself that have gotten you out of like depressive states? Because there are some people I know that go through it for months even, and it only gets harder as that continues. Have you seen clients from yourself, or maybe even others, that have opened up to breath work, really trying to be there for themselves? And I can't say fix everything, but like, it helped out a tremendous amount. I could see it helping out a tremendous amount.
Oh yeah, it helped consistently because I think it keeps you open to the flow of life. And so life is always kind of happening. And a lot of it is that, are we shut down to it, or are we receptive to it? Like, are we receptive? So like when people close off, what's hard, and I get it, like I've been there, like you're closing yourself off to life. Life's still happening, and it's waiting to find a way in. It's trying to find a way in.
Right.
And you've got to figure out, how can I just open up just a little?
Yes.
And so I always say, like, you got to come back to the fundamentals. Like, so that's one of the biggest things I had to learn was, so they talk about self-love all the time. And this, like, idea of, like, self-love is so important, and it's, like, the root of everything. And it is, but self-love is a very expansive, abstract idea. It's like, well, what does it mean to, like, really love yourself? Like, what does that even mean? Like, it's very broad. It can mean a million different things.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And so one of the things I really learned, and a lot of this actually had to do from my abandonment experience with my father, was I realized how when I got overwhelmed with life, I would shut down, but I would abandon myself. And abandoning myself looked like I would skip meals, and then I would get really so what happens when you don't eat, I'm not one of those people that even loses weight when they don't eat, but when I don't eat, I get really tired. And then when I'm really tired, and then they would feed my depression almost. So it's like, here I am, like, I'm really tired, and then I don't eat, and I don't do these things, and so I'm just shutting down more, like you're shutting your life force off more and more.
Right.
So you have to find things that are going to support you through that. And like I said, it's the fundamentals. So it's like morning sunlight, like drinking enough water, eating nourishing food, doing things like breath work, getting outside. So what I find, though, is that establishing those habits, you want to do that. Like, if you're in a bad place, try. Yeah. But the goal is like, when you're doing pretty good, that's the time to dial in those habits. Yes. That's the time where I say, build up your reserves. Like, you get into these routines, you get so good with the fundamentals that when something comes up, it's a lot harder to abandon yourself because it's just so habitual. You're like,
right.
no, like, I'm going to go have a cup of bone broth because, like, even a cup of bone broth is going to make me feel a hell of a lot better than not eating.
Absolutely, right.
And so, yeah, so that's something I find that can help people. And it's hard when they're in it.
Yeah, and it's not even like, I've been through it myself too, and thankfully with the help of friends and family, I've gotten out of states like that. But there are also people that I know as well that are deep into it as well, and you really try your best to help them get out of it the best you could, and almost like in a subtle way. You obviously don't have to be too hard on them in a sense, you know what I mean? But help the best you could. Sometimes it does help, sometimes it doesn't. But it is what it is in that sense. Like, they got to figure it out on their own. Everyone has to figure it out on their own, and whatever works for them, basically. Going back to saying, like, experiencing things of breath work at a younger age, I know you're really diving deep into the whole family aspect of things too, and I would love for you to talk about that as well. Is that a new form of class for the breath work?
Yeah, it's a new program I developed. So it's really interesting. Like, the healing world is very complex, and people have all different, like, forms of trauma, and there's so many nuanced ways for people to heal. There's two, like, foundational elements, though, that I have found that kind of run across the board, and all of it is that it's returning people to a sense of safety, and it's also them being witnessed. Like, we all want to be witnessed.
Sure.
And so, and a lot of what we're dealing with as we get older, it stems from our childhood. Your family is the first group experience that you have, and it's developing the habits and the dynamics that you are going to act out later in your life.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like with that prevention and alleviation element, it's like, okay, well, if we can get in there and we can teach people young, like, how do you regulate your nervous system so you know how to return yourself to a sense of safety? And then how do we use that special gift of the family to really learn to be seen, to be able to speak up and share what's going on with us, and also to witness other people? Because I think that's huge. Like, we're in a time where I think a lot of people are having trouble listening to other people. Like, it's all...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. More now than ever, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the more we can actually help, like, how do we really help the world? They say you start within, and so I'm like, you hear it, you see what's happening on social media, the way people interact with each other.
It's nuts.
It's all a bunch of childhood wounds, unhealed childhood wounds, like, bouncing off each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, like, we've got to be a little bit more proactive, and, like, how do we get in there? And so family has always been so sacred to me. I love my family so much. I can't wait for my own family.
Yeah.
It's such a special thing. And I'm like, well, why don't we really use this to our advantage? So part of it also comes as I've worked with a lot of families, and I see they're so overwhelmed. Like, they're like, I've been like, these parents really need breath work. Like, it would help them so much. But they don't have a lot of solo time, and so integrating something new is really hard for them. Like, they're like, so that's actually where family breathwork came about, where I was like, okay, well, you could do this with your kid. And so even if your kid is young, like, let's say the kid's like 4 or 5, even 3 years old, like, you can lie down for like 5 minutes, and they have to get used to it. There's a whole process of, like, and you can do some breath work. And you're going to be showing your child about taking care of yourself. So you're going to teach these children how to have these healthy habits early on. And the family group can do that together. And kids, they regulate their nervous system off of the parents, like, off of their caregivers. So the more the parents nourish their own nervous system too, they're not only showing their children, like, what it's like to, like, take care of themselves. Yeah. They're actually, like, helping the children regulate, and they're helping the nervous system of the household actually start to ease.
I think it's so important to just be a parent in general, because it's like, the kid's eyes are on you. A younger kid, more specifically. Yeah. The eyes are on you 24/7. Yeah. It's like the way you react to things, the way you take care of things, like, just anything and everything. Yeah. The eyes are on you, and they're seeing how you react and take care of certain instances. Yeah. They're gonna think, in a sense, that's like okay, that's what I need to do when I'm in those situations like that. Or practices, breathing practices, working out, things of that nature, good habits. I think it's very important to set a good example. And I think doing breathwork classes, especially in the family group setting, doing it all together, even like you said, even if it's for the shortest period of time, as long as it's subtly getting in there little by little, I think that's fantastic, and I think it's a great not like pivot to a different realm of it, because in a sense it's the same technique, but it's a new audience almost for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because the parents are struggling. Like we're all struggling with information overload. We're in a huge transition where we're all learning, okay, like how do we regulate like all this excessive information, and how is it affecting us, and how, like, we're all figuring it out right now.
Right.
You bring that into the family environment, and that's like exponentially harder for them, because like it's like everyone's dysregulated, and it's a bunch of dysregulated nervous systems trying to figure this out, and there's a lot of chaos, and they're just really overwhelmed. So it help, like, this I think is really there to kind of help them.
Yeah.
And there's also like this beautiful thing that we're trying to learn as a world, and I say it's like we're independent yet unified. And so what I love about this is that each person's like laying down to do their breathing, and if they're young, they're just there and laying and with the family, like they're not gonna do the breathing pattern too young. That's
right.
But what you learn is that, like, okay, I'm breathing on my own, and so I'm taking responsibility for my own nervous system. I'm self-regulating. Like I'm learning how to have, like, you know, personal authority over myself and like take care of myself. But when you're laying all together, it's you actually the energy of the group causes people to go further. So part of why people love to go to breathwork retreats or breathwork classes in these big groups is that they go even further than they would on their own. And so there's this beautiful element of like you go further together than on your own, and the breathwork gives you a tangible experience of that, where it's like, okay, we're each taking care of ourselves, but that we're contributing then to the well-being of the group as well.
Yeah, the energy is feeding off each other.
Right, and then you guys are lifting each other further up.
Yes.
And it's just this reminder of like, hey, we're on the same team. Like,
exactly.
we're in this together, because that's a lot of what's happening, and we see it in the world. When you're dysregulated, you're extremely defensive. Most people are.
Yes.
Like, they're either completely shut down, but they're also like very defensive. And so there's this sense like we're always very antagonistic. We like you feel like someone's being antagonistic even if they're not. Like there's just this like
right, or almost the feeling of you're being attacked. Like,
right,
sort of
right,
yeah.
And you're probably not, or maybe you are. Like, who knows? But we're all on this defense mode, and we're all acting like we're against each other, or we're kind of figure out like, are we on the same team? And it's like, no, you guys, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So again, there's that element of like, if we can get that going in the home environment, that can hopefully help the world. You know, we can start as a world start.
100%. I think that's where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I 100% believe that's where it starts.
Yeah.
I mean, people grow up in homes and everything like that, and they're literally they're learning how to become a good human being. Through other people that they're living with. Like, there's no other better person to like learn from than like your parent or something like that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm very happy you're doing that too. I think it's a great leeway into making the world like a better place in that sense too. Like, seriously, that's awesome. Have you had experiences with families that maybe have struggled together or everything like that, and have given you great feedback from it? Is that what keeps you going with doing this stuff?
So, well, this is a newer program that I am launching where I'm still gaining experience with doing it with the whole family.
Okay.
And so what's happening is, like, what I've kind of learned too is that it really does start with the pillars of the family, like the parents, like, and as much as you want the kids involved, when they're teenagers and stuff, they can, but the younger kids are they get really distracted easily,
Exactly.
and they need the parents to be really rooted first. So like before you even do this with your family, you have to establish a relationship with the breathwork yourself, and then it really helps if you're in partnership to you and your partner to establish a relationship with each other and the breath, and then to start incorporating the kids.
Right.
Because otherwise, when they all kind of lay down together, the experience I've had is that they're able to drop in there, but the chaos is still there. They're not. Like, it's not going to be this isn't like a miracle drug where it's like, hey, like, you're going to do breathwork together as a family, and the first time you do it, you're going to all sync up, and
everything's going to be so smooth.
Yeah.
Right.
No. And, I'm not a miracle worker. I've learned that. I'm like, I have to be very upfront with clients when I say, like, hey, this is what you can expect. Like, I'm not going to walk in and I'm going to leave and the whole family's going to be zen. Like,
right.
That's not, we can't just unravel everything like that.
Well, I think the big thing is, like, you are doing the work yourself. You're doing the guiding. You're doing the guiding. Yeah. They're doing the work themselves. They're figuring it out on their own still.
Yeah.
And, you know, with the kids that get distracted and whatnot, I mean, that's going to make the more mature, older people that, like, they're going to get distracted from that. And it might not be as efficient, right?
Right. And that's part of what I think the parents are learning with this practice. And that's why it's so important you establish a relationship on your own first.
Yeah.
Because then you're able to hold steady and not get distracted so easily. So your kid's fidgeting next to you. Yeah. You're able to still keep breathing and not be like, well, what do they need? They're fidgeting. They're fine.
Right.
We don't always need to be like, what do they need? What do they need?
Yes.
Like, we need to have a little bit of that separation, because otherwise, you know, you're just kind of, you're starting to match your child's energy, whereas you want to hold a steady, grounded energy that your child then can start to match.
Yes.
So they're feeling all over the place, they're feeling unstable.
Yeah.
You want to be that steady anchor that is like, okay, even if you're distracted, I'm going to hold steady.
Yeah.
And parents need practice with that, because we all do. The whole world.
Oh, I would be that way in the beginning too.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what does he need? What does he
right, and
want?
then you're constantly on them, and then they don't have a healthy relationship with discomfort, because anytime they're uncomfortable, you're kind of trying to fix the situation.
Oh, right, absolutely.
And it's just the more you can kind of come back into yourself and be like, I'm good. I'm going to know if they really need me.
100%.
Let them just be distracted. They'll settle. And they do eventually settle. It's the same with animals. Like, if you do this around pets, sometimes the pets will be like really kind of like, what's going on? But they follow your lead. And the more you drop in, the more you move your energy, like for any of the frenetic chaos you're holding on to, the more you let that go, they start to settle around you. And then the next thing you know, the animal's passed out next to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What would you say the most ideal age to have people experience breath work? The earliest, best age to open this up to people.
So to do the actual 2-part breathing pattern,
Yes.
I found between 10 and 12 is when they're kind of, some 8-year, it really depends on the kid.
Sure.
So between 10 and 12, I found is the most, is the age that they're able to drop in the easiest into the technique. They only need 8 to 15 minutes. You're going to do much shorter sessions with younger kids like that.
Yeah.
And then younger, even 8 or younger, like I said, they can kind of lie down next to you. It's something great to do for a transition. Either you're going to bed, you're lying there, you can do the breathing and the kid could just be next to you. You know, so if they're not able to do the breathing pattern yet, they can just lie next to you. And it's great for post school. Transition after school is really hard. So I'm if you can just take a little siesta, take 15 minutes to just breathe and regulate out your energy, it helps. It helps with that.
Could you see breathwork going into schools as maybe a small assembly, or going classroom by classroom, and just as a breathing technique to help them relax?
Well, this style's hard because as you experience, it's much better when you're lying down. And I think the logistics of having kids lying down is tricky.
Let's not even say elementary school.
Okay.
Let's say high school onward, high school into college and whatnot. Has it already been? I feel like it's been around already for colleges and stuff like that, no?
They have elements in it, and I've done classes for high school students.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, they've come into the yoga studio to do it.
Okay, right.
And, it's funny because, most of the kids are like looking around and like, what am I doing?
Right.
But then like you get like one kid afterwards, like, oh my God, like that was exactly what I needed. That just,
Yeah.
like, I was feeling so lost and uncertain. And so with high school students, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe like, you know how they have meditation rooms in airports now? Like,
oh, whoa, really?
Yeah, they have meditation rooms, and I've seen it in multiple airports.
Wow.
Now. I know. Now, high school, I think you have to be careful with like a secluded room like that. So
Sure,
I don't know, like, again, the logistics or...
Yeah.
But again, like, that's why I say it's the exposure, because they're most likely going to do it at home.
Yeah.
And it's something... I don't know. I mean, who knows how the school structures are going to change.
Oh, yeah, very true. I mean, I only brought that up because I feel like it would just be at least a good experience factor. And then if you were actually interested in it, like after maybe like a group session in a classroom, then they if they wanted to, they could start learning more about it on their own and practicing it more on their own. I only bring it up because I think it's something that everyone should at least try once.
I know.
You know?
I know.
Because I also don't think... like a lot of people know about breathing techniques in general like that, like because it's like it's second nature just to breathe, right?
Yeah.
And with that said, where do you see breathwork classes in the future? Like I believe it's an upward trend.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
Do you see it becoming more and more mainstream as the years go on? As it's helping people, because I have the true belief too that it could help everyone as long as they're consistent with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it definitely will. So, cycling back a little to the question of like breathwork and all the different forms. So there are actually different, like there's different, the candle breath, the box breathing. There are forms that people can do in school, and there are certain schools that are implementing these different breathing practices.
Right.
So that is great, and I think the style I teach, it will find its niche. It will find its way, because I agree with you. I think it's a very strong upward trend.
Yeah.
We had mentioned before briefly the Renaissance, like we're heading into that era, like, and a huge element of the Renaissance is actually, it's not just about like arts and science, it's also about the human body and new discoveries within the human body. And so I think especially the 20-year-olds and the younger generations, there's going to be a lot of self-exploration of like, what are we as humans, like this human vessel, was it actually capable of? I think there's going to be a lot of new discoveries. So I think a lot of people it's going to help with the anxiety and like what's going on there, but that's going to be a doorway into self-exploration. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just going to get more and more popular. People are going to want to do it in groups. I mean, who knows? Like, I do private groups with people too, because a lot of people are just like, group of friends are like, hey, like, let's get together and do some breathing together. Like, so yeah, I'm not sure actually the future. I think a lot will be done online just for convenience.
Absolutely.
But the in-person, again, there's always something great about the in-person. So
I think in-person is the best. I really do think so. I just think anything as far as in-person is the best. Like, it's not that I'm not a fan of it. I still love it regardless, but like podcast through Zoom, I'd much rather it be in person. The face-to-face aspect of it is amazing. It's more natural.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like you could become or feel 100% in it while you're online, but it's something almost like 100% being forced in it when you are in person with it, being in that setting and tone of it.
Yeah.
And those are two very important aspects to me as far as that for anything, especially something like a breathing class, you know?
Yeah.
Do you go to people's homes and whatnot to do the classes, or do they come to you usually at like the studio and whatnot? As far as the private.
Yeah, so private, there's an acupuncture studio in Katona where I see people in person. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot on Zoom actually, because I used to live out west. So like I was in Colorado and LA, so I still have clients from out west.
Right.
But I go to homes. Like I do like a big thing I've started to do is the private groups. Like people will be like, I have a group of friends I want to get together. Can you come to my home and do this? Or
I think that's a huge plus that you're doing that. Yeah.
So I do that because like I can't have a group into like the acupuncture studio. Like there's just not the space.
Right.
And then I'll do classes and people will come into the classes, but classes are hard here right now because it doesn't yet have enough momentum that you have the consistency where people are like, I'm going to be coming every week.
Sure, right.
So building the classes has been, and that's kind of why the focus on online has been there, just because it just...
I think it's more about the conveniency more than anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say it's going to evolve into? Do you see it evolving into even more techniques that maybe haven't even been discovered yet and could even access other dopamine hits and everything? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's so much more to explore with this that it could go any direction, honestly.
I completely agree because, okay, so I agree. And it's, again, I think psychedelics are amazing, like that we're doing that, especially because we're seeing the challenges with pharmaceuticals. And so I think psychedelics, especially for like veterans or people that have had intense stuff.
Oh, there's studies with it where it's helped out a lot.
It's so amazing. And I'm very much supportive of that. I'm also kind of like, we should be spending the same amount of money, if not more, studying breathwork and what it does. Because, so one of the coolest things about breathwork is, and I can't believe it's just coming up now because this is actually one of like the foundational essences, like you get to experience the essence of your soul. And so like it can be like almost like a soul merge, like what's what they'll call it. And you'll literally feel your soul moving through your body, like through your nervous system. It can be like an electrical currency. It can feel like it's just very activating. And it can cause your body to have these different responses and these different releases or different elements. So I'm fascinated not only about like what can like the breath unlock within the body, because I agree with you, like there's so much within our brain chemistry. So what's happening with this breathing technique and from a basic physiological standpoint is that extra oxygen that you're pulling in, it's stimulating the hypothalamus, and it's the hypothalamus is then releasing endorphins which move through your body, bumping up against your other ductless glands. So they're activating all these like secretions and chemical responses within the body. Which is amazing because it can really help like rebalance your endocrine system. It really can kind of help bring you back online because so much of mental disorders or challenges are from like our brain chemistry being out of whack.
Like the lack of it too and whatnot, right? Yeah.
And so what the breath does is it starts to help regulate out these energy centers, these in the endocrine system. So there's like that element happening and that's like, and that I think we are still just discovering. But then when you bring in the essence of the soul and how it interacts with the body as energy, like how does the body start to come online when it's like soul is present in the body? I think that's the future. I think that's something that we are heading into, where as much so I joke kind of because I'm like, there's so much conversation around energy. Everything's energy. Like we're trying to figure out energy. Is there free energy, everything? Yet we're not talking about like the most important part of energy, which is that we're energy and our soul is energy. Yeah. And what the heck does that energy do in this world? Like that to me is what's fascinating. And that's where I think we're going to unlock some fascinating discoveries because one, we're a micro of the macro. So what I believe is going to happen, hopefully, we might not, but if we choose to, we're going to start to go on this self-exploration journey, like really studying this stuff because it's going to help give us answers to the universe at large. And so we're going to start discovering things about the human body, like our DNA in particular. Like we do not understand our DNA fractionally. Like we understand parts of it, but there's so much that they call junk DNA because they don't quite understand its functioning.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, that's not junk. Like there's a lot for us to discover.
100%. I mean, especially something like DNA. I think everything has its job.
Yes.
Its own job. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they're studying like quantum physics and all this physics stuff, and I'm like, well, what about like the physics happening within our biology when our soul is interacting with our biology? Like that to me is like,
I'm very curious what kind of unravels in that direction.
Oh, I'd be too.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's something that probably should have been looked more into, like, a while ago, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. No, 1,000%. Like, we're more shut down from our bodies and, like, their brilliance than ever before.
Yeah.
And
why do you think that's because of? I have my own opinion as far as, like, the technology aspects of it.
Technology's huge.
Actually, that might be the main thing.
Yeah.
For me.
No, it is, and you know, a lot of people look at it as like a spiritual war, you know, like, but also I think it's also the contrast, like the natural contrast before you have expansion, there can be like a really tight contrast. And so right now we are very much experiencing like ultimate disconnection. And I think that's why so many people do have such anxiety. Like, they just feel so disconnected from their truth. They feel so disconnected, so they don't feel safe.
Right.
And so there's this like anxious energy, which is, I think, going to then cause this like expansion of us starting to open up and be like, well, what are we really capable of?
Right.
But it's about reconnecting to our body. Like, I've said this for years now, where I'm like, we are so much cooler than an iPhone. But we don't, like, and what people don't understand is like, an iPhone like receives like all the information, but it receives it from like the World Wide Web. So I look at that there's like a universal wide web. Mm-hmm. So like there's something beyond just what's on the web, and our bodies are these antennas. Like, we can receive this information and then we can direct it. And so I think they're like all these Marvel movies that you guys love.
Yes.
Like, there's so much abstract messaging in there, but I also think there's a lot of foundational truths that are kind of pushing the envelope towards us trying to figure out, like, well, what superpowers do we have that are innate that we've just been shut off to? Right.
Also, like, speaking of like the movie aspect of it, there's that one, I think it's called Lucy, with Scarlett Johansson, where like she was able to access, or Limitless,
that
awesome movie. But like the fact that we only access 10% of our brain naturally or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure it's a little more.
A little more, something like that. I know I don't have the exact thing.
Hear it, yeah.
But like, why haven't we really dived more into that and whatnot? Maybe they don't want to dive into that.
I know.
Or they know already how to access.
Whole evil.
Right.
Is that, you know, people do talk like we are in a spiritual war, and like however you want to look at that, like, I think most people can feel like the world, something's off right now.
It's like something's going on.
Yeah. And it really shouldn't be this hard to be human. No. Like I say that, like just even to try and be healthy, like, you have to work your ass off these days to be healthy, to get by, to just live like a basic life. Like,
without a doubt.
I was like, this is not right. This is not what we signed up for. This is not like what we're here to do. We're here to like experience a lot more. And so I think we're in that like crux right now where it's like, how can we navigate this and like push? And I think the breath and like people kind of coming back into themselves is part of the solution. It's part of the solution, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the solution, and I think we're getting close to that, to be honest, or back to it, almost like back on track, sort of way. Because I do believe I think before, like, how technology advanced, and I'm not saying technology is a bad thing at all. It definitely has its very helpful uses and many benefits, especially when it comes to medical fields and everything like that, and learning more. But everything has its pros and cons. I think there's the disconnect is a big thing with yourself, and I think it's primarily because of that and like social media and everything of that nature. I think it's all in effect with that. And you know, sometimes it may feel like it's too late to like get back on track with it because you don't realize it till now, sort of deal.
Yeah.
Because everything's like trial and error, I feel like, too. You know, with social media and everything like that, like, to really learn the benefits and disadvantages of it, how it's disconnecting people from themselves or comparing people to others and everything like that. It's tricky. It's quite a tricky thing. But I think doing something like breath work, meditation, yoga, all the healthy stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
To get yourself back grounded, you kind of get back to basics. And things seem a little bit more clearer, I would say, afterwards, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And you can make... Sometimes all the health stuff can get, like, overwhelming.
Sure.
And so
because it's not easy.
No, it's not. And so what is really cool about the breath and, like, what I really like to look at it is, like, it's life force. It's your vitality. And so as the breath is feeding you life force and vitality, but it's connecting you to your energy. So when you become tuned to who you are and, like, you just kind of feel that essence, you're able to pick up really more clearly on what experiences feed your life force, what deplete your life force, and, like, kind of what are neutral. What foods feed you life force, what activities feed you so you're able to kind of take everything you learn and simplify it down to kind of like, all right, well, what gives me life force and what takes it?
Right.
And you're able to make choices of the people you're around, the environment you're in, the foods you eat, the activities you do. And that does help because there is so much unknown right now. People can feel really powerless.
Yeah.
And so when you're kind of bring back, well, what do you have control over? You have a lot of control over that.
100%. 100%. At the end of the day, it's all about you, yourself, and the people you love too.
Yeah.
But taking care of yourself is priority numero uno, for sure.
Yeah.
I think food's a big factor of it. What you're putting into your body.
Huge.
And like you said, that's even hard nowadays too. Everything, all the food we're surrounded with, that is just not good
not
for you.
Food. Like,
it's not
chemicals.
Food, processed, whatever the case may be.
I know.
Why does it have to be such a struggle? Who knows with that in that instance?
I know.
There are obviously theories, but who really knows?
You could go down a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like wild.
Yeah. But you know what? I think this was awesome. I'm very happy that you were able to talk about your craft and everything like that.
Yeah.
And really, because you know what? Like you said, it is on the upward trend.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, I feel like, still don't know about it. And I'm glad we could open up to some viewers here what this is all about. I want to thank you, Eliza.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate you being game for talking the full spectrum of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And even... I would love for you to meet my friend Steve, too, who's into the Reiki and everything like that, and maybe, like, join forces in a sense in, like, some sort of class. I think that would be cool, too.
Yeah.
And, it's important to be open with everything, and then you get experiences like this in that class that we did last night, and just feel better and, like, oh, yeah, that's what I needed.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. Eliza, if you want to tell the audience where they could find you on the social medias, your website, if they're interested in taking a class, where could they reach out?
Yeah. So it's really simple. ElizaRoseKane.com is my website, and Eliza Rose Kane is my Instagram as well. Those are the best ways. Info is on both of them for classes, upcoming events, and joining my newsletter is great as well. And if you if you have done the breathwork meditation and you want to try out some of those meditations, my YouTube channel is Eliza Rose Kane. So
very good.
All across the board.
All that was just going to be displayed on screen while she said that. But if you misheard or whatever the case may be, it'll also be in the description down below for you to check out as well. I highly suggest you to. I highly suggest you do. It was a great class, and it was very experiential, and what's the other word I'm looking for? There's another word I'm looking for. It just felt natural. That's what I wanted to say too. Just felt natural, and it was excellent. Guys, if you guys like this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Also follow us on all social media platforms at Loggin On. And you can listen to this podcast audio-only version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. It's all going to be in the description below. And with all that being said, have a wonderful night, and peace out.
My second is Boy Meets World.
I never watched it, but I know that's, like, insanely popular. Was that an MTV one?
No.
What was it on?
I don't think it was. I don't know.
Or Disney? Was it?
I didn't watch it when it ran. I wasn't...
Right. Like, the reruns
I was too young.
And streaming or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But oh my god, that the choke hold that show had on me is insane. Absolutely insane. I was obsessed. I watched Girl Meets World. It was nowhere near as good, but they didn't butcher it, at least.
Okay.
But that's also where I met Sabrina Carpenter for the first time.
Oh, right. I heard she's involved with that, too. Yep.
She is. But, no, Boy Meets... Chef's kiss to that show. That show was perfect. It ended perfectly. There's not a character in that show I would change. Yeah. There's not a plot that I would change.
Right.
I loved it.